Hello everyone, welcome to part 9 of JavaScript. In the previous session we have talked about document object model, what is DOM, why we use DOM and how we can manipulate the HTML and CSS without actually going into the documentation of like the HTML and CSS, how we can manipulate our document through JavaScript. Okay, we have seen all of that in the previous session in the JavaScript part 8. Now in this session what we are gonna do is that we are gonna talk about a very important concept which we are gonna use later in future a lot, and the concept name is DOM events. So first of all, let us begin understanding what is the meaning of an event and why we use events, how we use events. After that we'll talk about what are the different types of events we are having in JavaScript. Okay, so the very first thing we need to understand here is what is an event. We have a concept called as events, and events are really important to understand for further development process. And the definition of event is that, let's say that I'm having a web page, I'm having a simple HTML web page, and in that I'm having a h1 tag, I'm having heading tag, paragraph tag and a button tag. Now let's say that whenever I click on the button, so this is my action. Whenever I perform some action on my page, irrespective of the element, it can be a button element, it can be a paragraph element, it can be a h1 element, whatever the HTML tag might be. But if I am performing some action on my HTML page, I want something in return, I want a trigger in return, I want to perform some action in return. Then this action response cycle, we call it as a event in JavaScript. Here when I click on this button, then I want to execute some work, I want to perform some work. So combining this action plus work in response, we call this as a event in JavaScript. Okay, understood the definition, we have understood the definition of a event. Now why we use it? So there are various, I can give you the use cases of events in JavaScript in general development in general. So for example, let's say that I am having a web page, and let's say I'm having a form web page. Form is a perfect example. Let's say I'm having a student registration form, and in that I'm taking the name of the student, the age of the student and the class, in which class he is studying. Now whenever I enter the form, the input boxes, I will get the keyboard. In our phone we'll get a keyboard, in our computer we can easily type using our keyboard of the computer. Okay, now when I click on submit, now I want all the data, whatever the data the user has extracted, I want all this data in my backend or in my console, in my browser. I want to print that data. So I can do that using the concepts of events. So this is a classic and a perfect example of why we use events. And there are various, for example, let's say that when I click on this button, let's say I want to change the overall appearance of this button, or whenever I click on this element I want to change the styling of this element, then I can do that using events. And in JavaScript we have n number of events, we have n different types of events. But in this, what we are going to do is that we are going to only study the events which are really important and which we really use in our development process. And there are some important events like Onclick event. Like whenever we click on a particular element, whether it might be a button, HTML like h1 tag or paragraph tag, whatever the element might be, whenever I click on that button, I want to perform some action. So this is one type of event. And another type of event can be on mouse enter, right? On mouse enter, I will show you, don't need to worry at all. These are very simple things. If you keep your mind in this and listen to our lecture, then I can guarantee you that you will understand A to Z of DOM events. Okay, so the second, the most frequent used event, another type of event is on mouse enter. Like for example, I'm having a box, I'm having a div block. Now when I enter into the div block, I want to change the HTML text, the inner text of that particular div block. Then I can do that using an event called as on mouse enter. So like this, we are having different types of events. Like we have keyboard events, we have pointer events. We will study each one of them in detail. But the thing you need to understand here is the definition of event. An event is nothing but, let's say in a document, I'm having different elements. Now whenever I perform some action into the element, whatever the element might be, whenever I perform some action on it, I want some work to get performed in response. So this action response cycle, we call it as a event in JavaScript. Now what are the different types of events? What are the different types of events? The first and the most simple event is Onclick event. Now Onclick is very simple. Let's say I'm having a button, or I'm having a HTML tag, whatever the element might be. When I click on that particular element, I want to show, or I want to perform some work in my JavaScript, right, in my browser, or whatever it might be. I want to do some work. Then that type of event is Onclick event. Now how we use Onclick event, let me show you. Before going to Onclick event, there is another type of event called as inline events. Inline events, we have studied inline styling, right? We have talked about what is a inline styling. So I will show you here. This is my browser. Let me clear all this. This is my HTML. Like I have my doctor, like a template, HTML template, and I have my JS connected with this particular HTML, and the JS is right now empty. Now what I'm gonna do is that, first of all, I will create a button here. I will create a button, and here I will write click me. The button name is click me. Okay, now there is a concept called as inline events. Here I'm having a concept called as inline events. Inline events are very similar to inline styling. So we have studied CSS, right, and we know how we can apply CSS to our HTML document. We can apply CSS using three methodologies. One is that we can directly give here style tag is equals to let's say font size, font family, like this. We can directly give styling to the element used in the tag itself. We call this as a inline styling. Similar to that, we have a concept called as inline events. So if we are like writing our events in the tag, in the HTML tag itself, then what we call that type of event is, we call them as a inline event. Okay, so here I can write Onclick. I will write Onclick is equals to, and here let's say I want to print console.log, and in the single quotations I will write hello, the button is clicked. And I guess this is the first time you guys are watching that we are writing our JavaScript inside our HTML. So we call this, if we are writing our JavaScript inside our HTML, then we call that JavaScript as a inline JavaScript, right? So here this is known as a inline event. Now if I run this browser, if I run this web page, then you can see that I'm having a button. Let me zoom it. So I'm having a button, and let me show you. I will inspect this, and in the console you can see I'm having nothing. Let me clear all this. So in the console I'm having nothing. Now when I click on this button, now you can see that hello, the button is clicked. Now when I click the button again, now you can see that this thing has printed 2 times hello, the button is clicked, like this. Whenever I press the button, action is getting performed on the button, and in response to that I'm printing this in my console. So this thing is known as a Onclick event. And what type of event this is? This is a inline event, because I am writing my event inside my tag, inside my HTML tag. And one more thing you need to remember here is that this seems very simple, like we are creating a button, and in the button itself, in the tag itself, I am giving onClick is equals to console.log, and I am printing whatever the things I want, right? This seems pretty simple, but inline events are very inefficient events, not in terms of performance but in terms of writing. What I mean by writing is, let's say I'm having 10 buttons, 20 buttons, 30 buttons. So for those 20 buttons, for that 20 buttons, am I going to write all the inline is equals to something, inline is equals to something? Nope. We're not gonna do that. So what we will do instead is, first of all, we will connect our file, our HTML document with our script tag. Okay, after connecting our file with our script tag, what I'm gonna do is that in my JavaScript, first of all, I will collect the button, I will select the button. So here, let's say I'm creating an object BT. BT is my object name, is equals to, and we already know how we can select elements. We have studied in our previous session, we have studied how we can select a particular element in JavaScript. So here I will write my document object, and using document object I will select my button. So here document dot query selector, and I will choose my button. Here I will give my btn button. Now save this, and I will print my button. First of all, I will print my button console.log, or I can give dir bt. Okay, now let me save and go to the document. Here, this is my document. Now you can see that I am having button document. Let me refresh it. You can see that I am having button document. And one more thing is that whenever you observe this button document, now this button object, you will see that I am having different properties, like I am having children nodes, attributes, all these things. Now if you want to see what are the different types of events we are having in JavaScript, we have n number of different events. For example, you can see that all the events will start from on, like here you can see on about, on animation, on animation iteration, on click, on for copy, before cut, all these things. This is the event which we studied right now. Like when I give on click, I am executing something, right? So this is one type of event like this. All the events in JavaScript will mostly start from on, like with wo, all the events will start. Like here, this many events I am having. Now we have studied only one type of event, which is on click. This is the event we have studied right now. Okay, now we have selected the button. We have selected the button, and as I told you that inline styling, inline events are not efficient. So what I'm going to do is that I will remove this. Now after removing this, I will go to my document, and in the document I have selected the button. Now after selecting, let's say that I want to perform something. What I'm performing, button dot on click, and whenever click function, whenever a click is performed on the button, I want to execute something. I want to execute a function. Let's say my function is console.log, and here I am printing hello. I am printing hello, simple. Okay, now what happens is, first of all I am selecting the button. This is the button I have created, and whatever the button it is, I am selecting the button first point. And after selecting the button, let me remove this, I don't want it here. So after selecting the button, I am giving a event, I am assigning a event to it. Like whenever I click on that button, I want to perform a function, and inside the function what I'm doing is I'm performing the work. What is my work? To print hello world. Okay, now let me save and go to the document. So this is my document, and this is the button which I have created. Now when I click on the button, now you can see that action in response hello, action in response hello. So this is about on click event. Like this we write our events in our JavaScript. Now the next type of event is on mouse enter. Here you can see the next event we are having is on mouse enter. This is also very similar to Onclick, but the only difference is, let's say I'm having a element, and when I click on the element, Onclick event will get occurred. But when I enter the element, then automatically OnMouseEnt event will be executed. Okay, so here I can write, here I can create another event, a btn dot OnMouseEnt, btn bt here bt dot OnMouseEnt, and whenever I enter the function, let's say I want to perform a particular function. Let's say first of all, let me declare a function hello. Okay, hello. Okay, now for this function I am writing console.log you have entered my button, you have entered into my button, okay. Now after this, when I enter into the button, I want to execute, I want to call this hello function. So here I will write hello. That's all. Maybe save and go to the document. You can see that I'm having nothing. Now this is my button right now. When I enter into the button, just observe it very clearly. When I enter into the button, you can see that you have entered into my button function is getting executed. Now when I click the button, the Onclick event will be occurred, and when I click the button, Onclick event occurred, and in response I have function, I have some work, that work will be executed. This is how the Onclick and OnMouseEnt will work. Now let us do an interesting activity. Let's say when I click the button now, I will create 3 buttons. And for these 3 buttons I will give 3 different IDs. Here let's say in the document I will remove this button, and I will create a button first point, or you can say one table, and I will give here ID is equals to hashtag 1. Okay, I am giving ID is equals to 1. Similarly, I will copy the same button, and here I will paste it here, paste. Okay, now to table, here I will give ID is equals to 2. Here I will give ID is equals to 3. Now what I want is, when I click on the button, I want to print the table of that particular table, multiplication table of that particular number in my console. So for that, what I'm gonna do is that I will remove all this JavaScript, and first of all I will write bt1 is equals to, and I will select that particular first element using ID, right? So here I will write document dot query selector, and here I will write my element selection through ID. So here I will give 1. Now whenever I select the first element, whenever a click event will get performed on the first element, bt1 on click is equals to, I will execute a function. Here. Now inside the function I will print my table for int I is equals to 0, and I should be, or I is equals to 1, and I should be less than or equals to 10, and I plus plus. Now here I will give, okay, my mind is in JavaScript, so let I is equals to, yeah, here I will give this is one table, right? So let c is equals to 1. Okay, now what I will do is that inside the loop I will print console dot log c into I. I'm gonna print that. Similar to this, I will copy the same thing and I will do it here, like 1, 2. Now here I will change the names, button 2, and I will write here 2, c is equals to 1, I is equals to 0 into, and here I need to execute the button 2, here button 2, button 3, okay, query selector hashtag 3. Now let me save this and go to the document. Here you can see I am having three different buttons. Now when I click the first button now, in the console the first table will be executed, the first one multiplication table will be there. So let me click on it, and you can see the first table is getting executed, 1 2 3 4 5 6, something like that. When I click 3 now, then the 3 table will be executed. Here you can see, let me clear this. First of all, let me clear all this console, and here I need to give 2 and 3. So let me save and go to the document. When I click 3 now, then the 3 table will come. So here you can see 3 6 9 something. When I click 2 table will come. When I click 1, the 1 table will come like this. So this is how we use Onclick and Onmouse events. The next and the most important type of event is event listeners. So we are having a concept called as event listeners, and to understand why we use event listeners in our JavaScript, why we have introduced event listeners, to understand that, let us take an example. So here let's say I will remove all this, and in the document also I will remove all the buttons. Now I will create a sample button, and here I will give click me. Now for this particular button I will select the button first. Let bt is equals to document.query selector. I will select the button. Okay, now after selecting the button, what I'm gonna do is that whenever I click on the button dot on click, okay, on click is equals to, I will execute a function, okay, function, and I want to print console dot log I am Batman. Okay, Batman I am executing. Okay, now I will copy the same function. I will copy the same function and I will print it here, but in the place of Batman I will print Iron Man. Okay, now let me save this. So when I click on the button, these two functions will get executed, yes or no. Now let us see the output, what will happen. So here I am having the button. Now when I click on the button, you can see that I am getting the output as I am Iron Man, but I am not getting the output as I am Batman, because the on click and on mouse, these two events will only execute the function which is coming at the last. That is why I am not getting the output of this particular function, because on click will only execute one function. So to tackle that, to tackle and to execute multiple functions, multiple callbacks, to give multiple callbacks to a particular element, we use event listeners. And what event listeners will do is that, first of all, it will listen. Okay, it will observe, like this is like a observer event. This is like a, you can consider event listeners are as a person who is just observing, who are just observing and just seeing the things when things are happening, when things are there, keen, they whole attention is just observing what are the things happening, and when that thing happened, when that event occurs, they will immediately perform some action. So this sort of events, we call it as event listeners. And what event listeners will do is that they will wait when the event is happening, when this particular event is happening, and when that particular event happens now, then they will give a callback, whatever the things we have written inside the event listener, they will execute those things immediately. So the syntax of event listener is, first of all we will write, let's say I'm performing I'm adding an event listener to a button. So the syntax of that would be, first of all we need to write our button if we are performing our event action on a button, and I will write add event listener, and in the parenthesis I need to give what type of event you want to perform. Okay, what type of event you are listening. Let's say that when I click on the button I want to do something, so here I will give click event. Okay, now for example, let's say when I enter into the button I want to perform something. So this is another type of event. Like this, I have to tell to my event listener that when I click on the event, when I click on the button, I want to do something. So here that doing something is nothing but my function callback. So this is the syntax of my event listener. Okay, so here what I will do is that I will first of all comment these things out. So I will comment these things out. Now okay, now what I will do is that for this particular button, bt.add event listener, and when I click on that particular button, I want to perform some function, I want to perform some work. So here I will give function, and inside the function I want to print console.log I am Batman. Okay, so after this, similar to this, I will write another event listener, add btn.add event listener and inside that, when I click on the button, I want to do something. So here I will write my function, I will write another function, and inside that I will write console.log am Iron Man. Okay, save this and go to the console. Now click the button. So here it is showing some sort of error in line 11. I don't know what type of error it is, but yeah, let me save this and go to the document, refresh it. btn is not defined. Okay, here I need to give bt, not btn. Okay, let me save and go to the document. Now I am having no error. So where is my console? This is the console I am having. Now I will click on the button. So when I click on the button, you can see that multiple functions to a single element is getting executed. This is why we use event listeners, right? And I hope you have understood what is the need and the usage of event listener. Now you can study about event listeners in detail in the MDN website. So event listener JavaScript, and I will get the MDN website. Yeah, this is the MDN website, and here you can see I'm having, this is the syntax of my event listener, and scroll down, types of event listeners. Let me search it. Types of event listeners in JavaScript, and the MDN website. You can see I'm having multiple types of event listeners. Where are my types? Let me go to W3 schools. Yep, you can see this many like events we're having. Whenever we hover over a mouse, our arrow cuts onto a particular element, that type of mouse in, mouse out, like this. We have different event listeners. You can try it out on your own by just pausing the video and try different things, like try on mouse enter, on mouse out, these two events, and observe how things will work. Okay, we have understood event listeners. Now the next concept you're having is this in event listeners. Okay, so before going into the this in event listeners, I want to show not just for a particular button. Let's say I'm having a particular HTML tag. Let's say I'm having heading tag. Here I will write my heading tag h1. In that I will write hello, this is a sample document. Okay, document. Now for this particular element, what I want is I will apply my event listener property. So here I will write let h is equals to, I will select the particular heading, so query selector, and here I will write my h1. Okay, after selecting this h document, what I will do is that for this h object I will write add event listener, and when I click on this particular heading, I want to perform a particular function, and here in the place of normal function I can give arrow functions as well. Okay, so inside this arrow function I want to change the overall styling of a particular element. Okay, so here I will write h.style dot background color is equals to, let's say I want to make it as yellow or black would be good, so black, and I want to change the foreground color, like style dot color is equals to, and here I will write white. So let me save and go to the document. Here you can see this is my document I'm having. Now let me zoom it out. So this is the document I'm having. Now when I click on the HTML h1 tag, observe what will happen. So here I will click on it, and you can see immediately the event listener is getting applied, and the overall styling of the element is also changing. Like this, not just on click or for a particular button, not just click or mouse button events, we can do multiple types of event here. For example, if I give like h dot on, and you can see this many events we are having, like on blur, on click, on change, on close, on copy. So here we can see here on copy. When I copy that particular text, I want to change a function. I'm writing a function, and for that particular object I'll write background color h dot style dot background color is equals to, let's say I want to make it as red. Okay, so let me save and go to the document. Now you can see the document is very simple. But when I copy this thing now, when I copy this, you can see that now the whole thing is getting changed. Like this, we can have multiple events, and we can easily apply any event using event listeners. That is why event listeners are very efficient when compared to general implementation of an event. Okay, I hope you have understood what is on-click event, on-mouse event, and add event listeners. Okay, now the next important thing and a little bit confusing concept is this in our event listeners, this in our event listeners, right? So the thing you need to understand here is, let me go to the document. In JavaScript, this keyword, this particular keyword has various meanings. This has various meanings based on the context. It is totally dependent on which context you are talking about. For example, for general objects, the meaning of this is I will store the data of the object. Okay, let's say that I'm writing a function in an object, and inside that function I'm printing this. So what this will print is, I will print the data of the object, which is nothing but I will print the data of the parent, So for object, whatever the parent that object is having, I will print the data of that parent. Okay, now for arrow functions, this keyword refers to parent's parent. Okay, parent's parent. For example, let's say that I'm having an arrow function, and in that arrow function I'm printing this, and the parent of that arrow function is, let's say, main program. So what this will do is that I will point to this main function, and I will store the data of window object. This might be a little bit confusing, but try to understand. For normal object, this keyword will store the data of that particular object. For arrow functions, I will store the data of parent's parent. Right? Now, for event listeners, whenever you create a event listener, what will this will do is that I will store the data of that particular event listener. I will store the data of that particular event. Okay, now before we go into this, I want to show you there is a concept called as default argument. So what is the meaning of default argument is, let's say that I'm writing my event listener btn.add event listener. In the parenthesis, I'm giving what type of event it is and function. So in that function, there is a event default parameter which goes into the function as an input. Okay, which automatically goes into the function, right? And we call that parameter, we call that input as default argument. So here, let me show you here. Remove this. Okay, now I will write event. I will create a normal function. Let me create a normal function. function, and here I can give a parameter event. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is that, let me remove this. Okay, so here I will print console dot log button clicked or h1 clicked. Okay, let me save and go to the document. You can see when I click on it, h1 is clicked. Okay, working. Now what I want is, I want to print the data of that particular event. I want to print what type of event it is. So here I will write console dot log, and I will print the event. Whatever the input I'm having, I'm printing that particular event. Now let me save and go to the document. You can see that when I click on it, you can see that I'm having h1 is clicked, and the type of event is pointer event. Pointer event is nothing but the event which is generated from mouse, from our cursor. That type of events we call them as pointer events. And similar to that, we have another type of events called as keyboard event. We will study them in few minutes, but yeah, this is a pointer event. Now what I'm gonna do is that I will print this keyword. So here I will print this. Now let me save and go to the document, click on it, and you can see I'm getting the data of the event. Like, what is the data? h1 is the object, and that thing is the data. So here what this will do is that it will store the object, on which object you are performing the action, on which object you are performing the event. That information will get stored in this keyword. Here you can see that h1, which is basically this, is storing h1 element. Okay, so I hope you have understood what is default event and default argument and this keyword. Now the next type of events we are having is keyboard events. Okay, so here let's say I'm having an input box, and in that I'm typing something. So this is known as a keyboard event, where I'm doing something with my keys in my keyboard. So let us see how this will work. Here I will write, remove this, all this. Now in the HTML document I will create a input button, input, and yeah, that's all. I can give placeholder, no need of giving placeholder actually. And here I will write let I is equals to document dot query selector, document dot query selector, and I will give input. Now I am going to perform event, let's say I on add event listener, and when I enter key press, when I press the key, I want to perform a function. I will write arrow functions here because they are simpler, and I will write console dot log key is pressed, key is pressed. Okay, I'm printing that, and along with it I will print the event, what type of event it is. So console dot log event, and here in the function, let me pass it here. I will write function and event, remove this. Okay, now everything is sorted. Now let me go to the document and see what is happening. I am having my input box, and when I click on it, and I will print J, A, B, I, R. You can see that whenever I am entering the key, you can clearly see that key is pressed, and the type of event is this event. And in the event itself, in the keyboard event, you can observe that the key which I have pressed is J, and the code for that particular key is key J. So in simple words, I can simply tell you guys that using events we can easily track each and every action, each and every move of a user using DOM events. You can track how a mouse is moving using DOM events, and you can easily track which buttons are being pressed by our user. So in simple words, I can tell you that we can track the movement of a user in our web page easily if you want, but don't do that. That will be like sort of illegal, but yeah. Okay, so this is about keyboard events. Like this we can have key down, key up, key pressed, key double pressed. Like this we have different types of keyboard events. You can study them in the by searching it in the MDN website, keyboard events in JavaScript, and you will get the website of here W3 schools. You can see key down, key press, key up. These are like different things, and char key code, like different things we are having about key events. Now when I give here, let me clear it out, and here I will remove all this. Now I will press enter, space, 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 space. Now if you observe what is the character, you can see that the key which I have pressed is empty, which is basically space, and the code for that particular key code is also code is space. You can see the code is space. Now if I give question mark, now you will get the event as the key which I have pressed is question mark, and the code is slash because I have used shift slash, something like that. Okay, I hope you have understood what are keyboard events. Now the next concept we are having are form events. Okay, now we are having a form. I will show you here. I will remove all this, and I will import my doctor, and I will also remove my JavaScript. Okay, now I will create a form here, form, and in that form, let's say my action is /submit. When I enter the form data, I want to go into the URL of /submit. Okay, now what I want is I will write a input box, input text, and here I will give placeholder enter text. Okay, similar to that I will give another input, and the type would be a password. Here I need to give password, and placeholder is equals to password. Okay, here password. Okay, let me save, and I will give IDs to these two different things. So ID is equals to let's say text is my ID. Okay, here I can also give here ID is equals to pass. Okay, let me save. I will give button also. So button submit type is equals to submit. Okay, now first of all I will select my button. Let me select the button BT. Okay, I will write button query selector button. Okay, now here I need to give my form will have all the data. So here I will give form. Now what I will do is that when I click on the submit button, now I want to print the data on my console screen. So to do that, what I will do is that first of all, let me begin with a small thing. So here I will write bt dot on submit, or I can also add event listeners. We generally do all the events through event listeners only. So here I will write submit, and when I submit the form, now I want to print function console.log form is submitted. Okay, I am printing it for now. We will see later how we can extract the data from the form. Okay, so let me save and go to the document. Here I am having enter text, enter password. So here I will enter some random text and some random password. Okay, and what I will do is that I will click submit. So here you can see that I am going to a URL called as /submit, and I am getting error, can't get submit, because there is no web page called as submit. But yeah, let me go back and observe the console screen very clearly. So when I click the submit, now immediately I'm getting a text, and because I'm going into another page, that text is disappearing. So here just observe the console screen. For very few milliseconds I'm getting the text. Just see, it is too fast, I guess. But yeah, now if you want to like prevent the default action, prevent the next step of the form, then we use a function called as prevent default. So here let me tell you what I'm talking about. Here, whenever there is a form and you are submitting something, but in between it you want to extract some data or you want to print something in the console screen. So you can see that immediately when I click on submit, the form is going into another page, and because of that I am unable to see what are the things which I am printing on my console screen. So to prevent immediate action of the form, we use a function called as prevent default function. So what this prevent default function will do is that it will stop the immediate next step of the function of the form. So here I will write in the form, I will write event. Now in the function what I will do is that I will write event dot default prevented. So what this will do is that it will stop the immediate next step. The immediate next step in my form is to submit the form. So here what this function will do is that it will immediately prevent the submission. Okay, so let me go to the console. So here I will write some text and password and I will click on submit. So here you can see that the next step is immediately prevented. The next step is to submit and go to next URL, but because I have used the prevent default function, the immediate next step is not getting occurred, and you can see that this is how the output we are getting. Like this is one of the type of form events. Now the next really interesting concept is how we can extract the data of the input, like the data which is entered by our user. So to do that, what I'm gonna do is that first of all I will select the form, and in that I'm having two things, right? A password input box and a text input box. Now I want to collect the data which is entered by my input box of text and password. So how I can do it? I can do that here in the JavaScript. What I will do is that I will select let I is equals to, first of all I will select the input box. So here query selector, and first of all I will select input. For example, let's say text is my ID, right? So I will select text first of all, and I will print console dot log and I dot value. So before going to value, let me show you. So I will save this, and here I will write hello is my name, or text hello, and password is also hello. Now I'm not extracting password, I'm just extracting the text. I will click on submit. Now you can see that I'm getting the object of my input box, text box. Now I will print the properties. In the place of log, I will print the dir properties. So let me save and go to the document. Here I will write h something something, and this one, click on submit. You can see that I am getting the properties. Now if you scroll down, there will be a property called as value. Go to v section. Here you can see that the value which I have entered is JEEK. So if you want to print the data which is entered by our user, then I can give I dot value. Similar to that, I will write let j, or you can say pass p is equals to document dot query selector, and here I will write hashtag pass because my ID is pass, and I will write console dot log, and I will write p dot value. Okay, now let me save it and go to the document. Here what I'm doing is I will print my username, like I will write my username Jabir, let's say, and my password is Jabir1234. So here I will write Jabir1234. Now when I click the submit button, now you can see that I'm getting the username is Jabir and the password which I have extracted is 1234. Now in real time we don't do that like this. What we will do is that we use some algorithms called as hashing and salting, so to convert our password into some another hash form. Okay, now the person who is coding, the person who is a developer of the platform will not see your password. Like platforms we use hashing algorithms, but yeah, this is a very basic method which we use to extract the password and the username of a particular user. Now here I am printing these two things. Here you can see that I am printing the user text value and the password value. But if you want to send the data entered by our user to the backend, then you can do it. But we haven't studied backend now, like till now, so that is why I'm just printing the data. Like this we extract the data from our forms. Okay, so I hope you have understood different types of events. Like till now we have studied Onclick event, Onmouseevent, add event listeners, and in add event listeners we have talked about default event, we have talked about this keyword, and keyboard events, form events. Now I want you guys to study one more event on your own, which is change event. So what is the meaning of change event is that I will tell you very just the basics of it, but I want you guys to study about it. So change event, what change event will do is that whenever a change occurs in a particular element, you want to do something, then what you will use at that point is you use change event, and change will keep track of each and everything in the document. So this is about events. I hope you have understood what are events and how helpful events are to us. So with that being said, I will see you in the next lecture, and the next lecture is going to be on APIs and JavaScript stacks.